Welcome to part 2 of the video reading of the Turkish mountain. Now part 1 ended rather abruptly, as it tends to do, because I never know exactly how much time I'm going to have available on my cell phone when I'm recording this. So it ended with rather a strange look on my face. Anyway, this is part 2 of the Turkish mountain as we continue this adventure. The truck had just gone over the side, if you remember. All of this had happened in less than 30 seconds. And I remember that I had been rushing to help Mary after she fell getting out of the van. I looked toward the van across the road next to the bonfire. Jake was there and he was holding Mary, who was crying and shaking. I let them be and turned toward the pass where the group of men had just reached the bundle in the road. I started up the road toward them, avoiding the trail of oil from the blown up diesel and the pieces of the engine scattered over the snow, the oil pan with a big hole in it, a couple of battered pistons, some old rubber hoses, and numerous unidentifiable bits, steam rising from them. As I got closer, I could see with relief that the bundle in the road was moving and sitting up with the help of the other truckers. It was the hapless driver, and he had managed to jump free before his truck and his livelihood disappeared over the edge. They had him upright and were slowly walking down toward me, supporting him on either side, with his arms around the shoulders of two men. I joined the group coming down and listened as they talked excitingly amongst themselves. The driver seemed all right. He was limping and blood was coming from his nose. I imagined the snow cushioned his fall as he escaped certain death. I offered him a cigarette, which he accepted with a smile. Back at the bonfire, the men were talking and gesticulating, probably reliving the drama of the past 5 minutes. I was just pleased that the rig had gone over the side before ploughing into us, and certainly causing much damage, and probably death. The injured driver was gently handed into a truck, which then turned around and headed back to Palantir, where he could get some rudimentary medical attention. I found the truck driver who spoke English standing near the fire, heaping more wood on. He was in his 50s, deeply lined face, grey hair and clipped moustache, about 5'9", stocky with a commanding look. "Ah, there you are, American?" he asked me. I wasn't about to explain dual nationality, so answered in the affirmative. "Yes, my name is John. What is your name?" "My name is Hakan. I am from Istanbul." "So Hakan, will you go over the mountain today after what just happened?" "Yes, I will. That happened because it was all bad truck and no brakes on trailer. My truck back there is one truck, no trailer. I carry petrol. You call gasoline, yes?" Yes, that's right, gasoline. "So you've been over this pass many times, Hakan?" "Oh yes, many time. Now I have plan to help get van over mountain, Mr. John. My truck very strong, have good tires, good brakes. I pull the van over mountain with chain, yes?" "Wow, thanks for the offer, Hakan. But it's not my van. I just ride along. It belongs to that man over there with his woman. I will bring him to you." I walked over to where Jake was calming Mary down. The spectacle of the log truck going over the side had unnerved her more than usual. I thought that the idea of going up and over the pass in the snow would totally freak her out again. Jake followed me back and I introduced him to Hakan. "So, Mr. Jake, we have 1 hour before the dark. I think there will be more snow very soon. I have good truck and strong chain to pull. We put chains around the tires on my truck. Very good for snow. I know this road very well. Use strong chain and pull you over mountain. I do this for $100 US. Yes?" I thought it was a brilliant idea, and even though it could be dangerous, at least we wouldn't be stuck here, possibly for days. But ornery, arrogant Jake started to object, of course. Well, I'll just wait till the snowplows come and clear the road. We can go back to the village and find a place to stay for the night. And $100 is too much, and it might damage the van. And how do I know you can do this? And what happens if you lose control? Hakan looked at me, shrugged his shoulders, and walked back to his truck, where he lit a cigarette. I thought this was a bit careless when he had a couple of 1,000 gallons of petrol behind him, but attitudes in third world countries tend to be more fatalistic. Hakan then started to unload the chains to put around his tires. Look, man, I said to Jake, this is not the States. There aren't any snowplows out here. We're in the middle of nowhere and no one's coming to clear the road. I think Hakan is right. There's another storm on the way, and if we don't try it now, we could be stuck here for days, maybe weeks. I doubt if there's any rooms available in Palin, sir. There must be 100 trucks behind us now. I don't like the idea of sleeping in the van in the cold tonight, or a bunch of nights, if we can't get through for days. Maybe we can haggle with the price if that's bothering you. The other things you're worried about? Well, who knows? Where's your sense of adventure anyway? I think we should take him up on his offer. Otherwise, I'll leave you now and keep the money I owe you. I'll give it to Hakan and ride with him to Istanbul. Oh, let me talk to Mary, he replied gruffly. Okay, but make it quick. He's putting the chains on his tires and will probably leave in a few minutes, I said, turning my back and walking away. Jake went back to Mary, who was now in the van. I could see them arguing. I headed to Hakan's truck and helped him attach his chains, my fingers cold and numb. Well, we do this? He asked. I don't know, Hakan. He's not the smartest man and doesn't like suggestions from other people. If he wants to stay here, can I ride with you to Istanbul? I can pay you $50. Yes, we can do that. Here come Mr. Jayek. We finished attaching the last chain as Jake approached. Mary's really scared, but I think I'll accept your offer, Hakan. I'll give you $50. Now, even though the Turks are known for their haggling expertise, Hakan was wily enough to realize that we had no option and held firm to his price. No, Mr. Jayek, that is the price. $100 US. $100 was a lot of money back then, especially in a third world country, and to Hakan was more like 1,000. He wasn't going to miss this chance, and I didn't blame him. Okay, $100, said Jake, and they shook hands as Hakan pocketed the money. Hakan pulled his truck in front of the van and attached a stout chain to our chassis, getting covered in snow as he crawled on his back under it. I slid open the side door and climbed into the back. Jake kept the engine on but left the transmission in neutral. A blast of the truck's air horn, the chain tightened, and we jerked forward as Hakan released his clutch. Mary was rigid in her seat, her mouth moving, no sound coming out. I crouched by the side door, looking through the front window as snow started to fall. It was getting near dusk, and I didn't want to be traversing this horrible road in the dark. Neither did Hakan. I could feel him shifting through his gears as the tow chain slackened and tightened, and he stayed in low third, going about 15 miles an hour. Mary had her hand on the door handle, and I did the same. My right hand was firmly on the handle on the sliding door, and I thought that if it looked like we were going over the edge, I would slide the door back and jump out. Problem was, if I had to do that, I would have jumped right over the edge, as there were no more than 4 feet from the road to the steep drop-off, and we were going higher. Now the visibility was dramatically reduced as the snow started falling harder. The van slid to the left, and Jake fought to correct it. Mary screamed. She was not handling this well, and I didn't blame her. It was insanely dangerous. There was a puff of exhaust smoke from Hakan's truck, and I could hear him downshifting as the road became steeper. My whole body was tense, and I squeezed the door handle tighter. Jake's fingers gripped the steering wheel, And I will admit he did a good job keeping the van straight behind the petrol truck 50 feet ahead, its red taillights barely visible in the lowering storm. And the treacherous, dangerous drive continued, Hakan never going over 15 miles an hour, Mary muttering, Jake oblivious to anything around him except keeping us lined up behind Hakan, and me shivering in the back, crouched down, ready to leap out if I had to. After 15 agonizing, harrowing minutes, we reached the summit, and Hakan carefully pulled over. There were about 24 trucks behind us, slowly following us up the mountain grade. They eased past, each one blowing its horn. When they had disappeared into the murky gloom ahead, Hakan got out of his truck and walked back. Jake rolled down the window and a blast of cold air enveloped us. Well, Mr. Jake, we at top of mountain. Now I unhook chain and you follow me slow, down to Erzurum, yes? As he had no alternative, Jake agreed, and Hakan crawled under the van again and unhooked the chain. I know good, cheap, clean hotel in Erzurum. I go there. You follow, okay? And with that, he waved, lit another cigarette, climbed back into his truck and moved slowly down the road. We followed, Jake never getting out of second gear. The convoy of trucks that had preceded us had packed down the newly falling snow, and even though their track was wider, Jake managed to keep the van in their ruts. It was scary, going down the mountain as dusk drew in, and combined with the heavy snow, cut visibility to a few hundred feet. We felt like we were in a tunnel and couldn't see the sides of the road, which was probably just as well. We skidded a few times, the tires losing grip, but finally, after half an hour, the road straightened out and we could see the loom of our destination ahead. Into third gear, we followed Hakan's truck through the streets of the ancient city. Soon he stopped in front of a small hotel and we all walked in to register. The proprietors knew Hakan and they talked for a few minutes, probably about our scary trip over the infamous mountain. Then we were shown to our rooms, and a few minutes later, Hakan knocked on my door and invited me to have a hot meal with him. Jake and Mary didn't want to go, so the two of us trudged through the snow on the sidewalk a few hundred yards to a little restaurant tucked away on a side street. We walked into a scene from Scheherazade. A worn room with maybe 15 tables, all full of Turkish men eating and laughing. A band played traditional music in a corner, and waiters dashed to and fro with trays heaped with beef and lamb, doner kebabs and vegetables. There was excellent Efes beer and small glasses of raki, an anisette-based liquor similar to ouzo. A big log fire in an ancient and soot-covered fireplace roared and crackled. At one table sat some of the truck drivers who had followed us up the mountain pass. They called to Hakan and made space for us. Lots of hand shaking, back slapping and introductions. As soon as I sat down, there was a heaping plate of food in front of me, a bottle of beer and a glass of raki. And what a night it was into the early hours of the morning. Everyone was happy to have put the mountain behind them, and they all loved to party. Around midnight, there was a hush in the room. The band started playing soft, seductive music, and onto the floor swayed a belly dancer covered in gold jewelry, face behind a crimson veil. She danced and gyrated slowly, sensuously, gorgeous painted eyes darting around the room, focusing her attention for a brief moment on everyone, captivating them, making each of us a part of her flowing story. When she was finished, coins were tossed into the floor, and she gracefully picked them up and disappeared. Sometime in the early hours of the morning, after much shaking of hands and well wishes, Hakan and I stumbled out into the cold night. The snow had stopped, and the stars glistened and twinkled above. We staggered back to the hotel, supporting each other, joking and laughing. A big hug, garlic breath from both of us, and I fell into my bed and slept for a few hours. Jake banged on my door and I sat up, kneading my aching head. We had a cup of strong Turkish coffee in the small lobby and I went looking for Hakan. But he had already left, had headed down the road to Istanbul, 700 miles away. We climbed in the van and I lay in the back, massaging my head, remembering the loud, colourful, smoky night before, the traditional Turkey that few foreigners get to experience. We arrived in Istanbul 2 days later, and I gladly paid Jake his $50 and turned my back on him and Mary. It had been an exhausting journey, sometimes boring, sometimes too much the opposite. My friend Abdullah in Herat, who I never heard from again, a night in jail in Iran, the ominous mountain in the snow, nearly 3,000 miles across a landscape that had changed little in centuries. Old villages where people stared at us unblinking, kids laughing and pointing, shepherds herding their flocks of sheep and goats down the road, causing us to slow to a crawl, fertile valleys, meandering rivers, ancient mosques and crowded, smelly bazaars, and always the questions whenever we stopped. Where are you from? Are you married? What is the purpose of your visit to our country? Would you like some chai? Usually welcoming, always curious, often gracious. Within a week, I had flown back to New Hope, Pennsylvania, where I had been living before I left on this adventure. I received medical attention, and the doctor said he'd never seen anything like my intestines. He was amazed I had survived my debilitating dysentery in the Himalayas, and was astounded that I had endured the grueling overland trip back. 4 weeks later, I borrowed $5,000, and with a leather cowboy hat on my long curly hair, I boarded Pan Am Flight 003 in New York. I got off in Tehran and transferred to a small, old Afghan Airways jet, which flew me back to Kabul. There, I bought all kinds of jewelry in the bazaar and sheepskin coats in Ghazni. I also visited Mazar-e Sharif, where the best hashish in Afghanistan was made. Besides the jewelry, all the smelly, uncured coats and clothes were bundled into burlap sacks and air freighted to Philadelphia. It was my first venture into the import-export business. I had just turned 21 years old. So, that's the end of the Turkish story. Next week, I'm going to continue the journey, and you'll see what happens when I arrive in New York. The title of the story is Busted, and you'll see why. Now, my books are normally not set up in chronological order. Stories stand on their own. But I decided with this particular story to read one after the other. So, don't forget to subscribe and like my video if you do like it. If you don't like it, you can don't like it too. And click the bell so you can be reminded when I upload a new video. And next week, we're going to continue and end this trail of adventure with a story called Busted. Have a great week.